Actually, it's not for kids.
Tom, I went to Costco today.
To get the double chocolate chunk.
Oh, the double chocolate chunk cookie. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, what the hell are we doing? Why don't we just make like shitty TikToks?
We should just make the exact same content as the Costco guys, but it's like Konnichiwa games. Just like, that's right, we got the llama, give it a boom, like boom, like.
I don't know why, but that whole thing just makes me so mad.
It's very polarizing, the Costco guys.
I just think about how much suffering there is in the world, and then you got their faces imprinted in my memory of just like, I don't know if they're living it up or what. You know, maybe they're good people or whatever, but it's like, I don't know, it just feels so dystopian to me.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel that. It's a dystopian is a good word for it. Costco guys, it basically is the epitome of feeling like you're watching the shadows on the wall in Plato's cave, right? Like, you're like, exactly. Oh, damn, these shadows are sick. You know, you watch the Costco guys.
When we were there, they were restocking the LaCroix. So they had like the forklift and everything, and we couldn't get access to LaCroix. And it felt like Dune for a second. Water is so scarce, you know. We have to
like
just
carbonating your own piss, like, to survive.
Yeah. Josie was running around like the little sister assassinating the Harkonnen or whatever.
The forklift operator was a Harkonnen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just glad I finally got my case of LaCroix, because otherwise it would have been a riot.
You wouldn't be ready for this podcast without that can.
Gotta grip it and rip it. Welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating board games that have stood the test of time. I'm your host, Kenny Katayama.
And I'm the other host, Tom Bowers. Today, featured topic is, don't eat those pieces. How you can get yourself reinvited to each week's game night. But before we talk about getting invited back out to the game night, we're going to talk about some of the things we've been playing recently. But before we even talk about that, Kenny, I think you have a little surprise for us.
Yeah, we got a Project Mom update. Now, you might be wondering, what's Project Mom? In episode 21... Kenny mentioned, wouldn't it be fun if I started my mom on tic-tac-toe and by the end of the year we got to Through the Ages? That was a hypothetical kind of in passing that Tom and I were workshopping. Well, guess what? It's happening. Ran it by my mom and she's like super down because she's always down to like explore and learn new things. Let's talk about how this works. My mom has played a decent amount of games. My mom! Oh no, you were doing
I was
regular
doing Muscle
show.
Man, yeah.
Okay, I thought you were doing like a weird Borat. Okay.
Mama.
She's played a decent amount of games. Like she's played some Trick Takers, she's played all the classics. She really likes Stratego. She's played Bonanza. All of these she's decently liked. She's played a good number of party games. So we've got like a good foundation here.
Okay, we're not starting from like total scratch.
And the goal is not to put her through the whole gauntlet. I don't think she needs to play everything, but I want to get her grounded in fundamentals so that she can build up to a really, really complicated game. The final game is Through the Ages.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think the goal is for her to finish a game of Through the Ages, but it is for her to get through like the first age and feel like she's understanding what's going on.
If I was trying to get my mom to go all the way, it'd probably end up in either Brass or War of the Ring.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want to tease what games are on the trajectory. What I can divulge is it consists of 15 total games. There's kind of 5 phases, so like 5 phases, 3 games each. And obviously they get progressively more complex. I have a feeling that somewhere along the way, my mom's going to tap out, but I'm curious to see in what phase she taps out in, because so far, so good. So far, we've already played 2 of the games in phase 1. Azul. She actually played this multiple times, and she did well in the first few and then dominated in the last one. Her review is, I really, really like this game. I still don't really understand the scoring, but I think I'm good at these kinds of visual games, which I think she just means like positional abstracts. But yeah, she like handily won the last match there. So she was like, I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to spar. And that's one thing that I'm concerned about. I feel like we're going to get into like we're moving to too fast. I want to just keep playing X or whatever.
Right.
If that's the case, you know what? Like, I found a great game that I can play with my mom. I'm okay to like take time on it. I don't want to like force her through this. So we're going to go slow here. You're not going to get an update every week is what I'm saying. Second one that she played was Carcassonne. And Carcassonne, her review is like, this is my favorite game that you've ever shown me. She loves the visual aspect of it. She likes building the castles a lot. And just, there was just a lot of like fun little twists and turns in this one. People playing and counterplaying, and we were laughing the whole time. She just absolutely loved this one. For her, it kind of was like I didn't know board games could do this kind of moment. So it was really delightful seeing her unwrap this one. I think this is the first game I've shown her where it hasn't just been fun and it's really been like, this is amazing. That was a delight. It was really nice having her experience Carcassonne and have that experience with it. So far we're thumbs up on both. Let's see where we go next.
Is there an idea here to introduce her to like particular mechanics as you work your way towards Through the Ages? You're more concerned with like the weight of the games being the thing that staggers.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Oh, okay.
Carcassonne, mostly it's just scoring via different avenues. It doesn't hurt to also show her the tiling, because I think tiling shows up in some of the other future games, even if it doesn't show up in Through the Ages proper. So that was Mom the Ages. That's
a cool project. I'm inspired. I might have to see if my mom will go through Project Mom. Maybe I'll wait to see how your Project Mom goes, and then based on that, we'll try and get my mom all the way to Brass, Lancashire. Only the future can tell. Stay tuned to find out.
Will Kenny's mom play Through the Ages? Find out on the next episode of Shelf Stable.
Ding, ding, ding.
You know, after those nice games of Azul and Carcassonne, I got to sit down and play some real hardcore shit. You know, no more of that chill fun time. I got to play ICECOOL. And I know what you're thinking. ICECOOL, isn't that a baby game?
Yeah, isn't it a baby game for babies?
Yeah, maybe if you don't have the brain and hands of this guy right here. ICECOOL was designed by Brian Gomez, published by Brain Games. I can't tell if that's like he just made the name of the company like his name, but like the letters switched.
Yeah, he was like Brain Anagram. We're going with it.
This is a game in which you flick little penguins around a school. It's got a delightful little theme. And it's got one of the coolest boxes that I've seen in a board game. The box has nested boxes inside of it, kind of like one of those Russian dolls. And they unfold to make a large dungeon of sorts, which is like the penguin school. I love the way this game is assembled in terms of components.
I'm a little surprised thinking about this all of a sudden that no one's done this for like a proper dungeon crawler.
I know, right? ICECOOL is a flicking game, but the penguins, they're like weighted. You can do kind of these interesting flicks with them where you can hit them on their side and they'll curve. They'll do kind of a curve shot. If you're the kind of person that likes curving their shots at a bowling alley, this is the game for you.
Do you like crokinole, you know?
Carom?
Do you like carom or crokinole?
But definitely a different level of navigation in terms of the movement. Like the pieces just move very differently because they have that bobbing element to them.
They're like those Weeble toys.
One thing that I really like about ICECOOL is that I can decently manipulate the penguins. Because in crokinole, I'm always like, this will be easy. It's a wooden disc. I know how wooden discs work. And you hit it and it like somehow flies off the side of the board and into somebody's throat. And then you have to like perform the Heimlich or something. In ICECOOL, you might have like 10 or so flicks at the beginning where you're just figuring it out. But after that, you can more or less actually be pretty cool at the game.
Yeah, I will say it is weirdly easier to make these penguins travel the direction you want.
Recently, there was like a Kickstarter or something, New Game Alert, of like a follow-up to this called Iron Forest. That's basically ICECOOL with mechs, like on 2 stories elevated. So if you want ICECOOL, but then you want a second story that you can fling your penguin via catapult, it looks really cool. I've seen it out on a table and it's massive. I was like, I want to play that. So
they were like, we heard the complaints. ICECOOL, baby game. baby aesthetic. We're making it cool. It's all about mechs now. 3-dimensional table presence. This is going to look sick at the hotness room at the fucking convention. It goes crazy. We're playing with angles, 2 layers. Like it's like a 90s commercial aesthetic. It's crazy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it does really look cool though.
I know. I'm ready.
I want to try this out. Yeah.
They are tapping into the right kind of nostalgia with this, I think.
Yeah, I love that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Anyway, that was ICECOOL from 2016.
Well, that's a pretty cool game, Kenny. I'm talking about a game from 2017. It's Downforce, designed by Rob Daviau, Wolfgang Kramer, and Justin Jacobson. Kind of freaking stacked pedigree for this game.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize, but this is published by Restoration Games. This is baby's first Formula D in a certain way. You can literally play it with kids, but it's not so dumbed down that as an adult, you're going to have a bad time. It is a racing game. It's literally just put cars on a track, make them move around the track. How do you get them to move around the track? You have to play cards from your hand that move some number of different colors of cars. So most of the time, you're going to be moving the car that you sort of own because there's an auction at the beginning of the game that lets you select which color you're going to own the team/car of. And then that's the car that you would like to win, because if your color wins, you get paid. But the other thing that's going on is that you have all these other colors on each card in your hand that you're going to have to move in addition to the one that you're moving. And as the cars pass certain markers along the track, you place bets on which car you think will win. And so it has that almost camel up element to it, where the earlier you are at correctly guessing the winning car, the more you get paid out. And the thing that's funny about that is if you bet on a car that seems like it has a strong lead, you can actually sort of help it maintain its lead, even if it's not your own car. Because your car winning, of course, gets prize money, but if your bets pay out, that might almost be worth more money than betting on your own horse. So this is a really cool racing/betting game. If you just want to play it with kids, you can take out basically the auction and the betting and just have kids race around the track with it. And famously, if you watch Tom Vassel's review of this, the Mario Kart cars from like the Mario Kart board game fit in these spaces. So it's perfectly designed for that. This is a really fun, light game. Doesn't take more than like 20, 30 minutes to play, even with a full roster. And I've enjoyed this every time it's come out. It's not like blowing my cock off, as I like to say, but it's a nice little middleweight game.
Yeah, I enjoy this one quite a bit too. I love that it isn't quite the betting game and it isn't quite the racing game. It's somewhere in between, because I feel like usually when there's a racetrack, it's like all in on one or the other. No pun intended. It's interesting that you said it's like baby's first Formula Day, because I feel like Formula Day is simpler than this. Yeah, the rules are simpler for Downforce, but I feel like there's more depth there, because Formula Day is literally like, I'm going to go super fast. Let's roll the big die. No, I should go less fast. I'm going to roll the smaller die. Like that's what you do in Formula Day. So I don't know. Like they both have their complexity and their simplicity to them, but I feel like Downforce is a more paired design, which is maybe why it might be more straightforward, but ultimately it leads to like more interesting decisions, in my opinion.
I really like the art on this box too. I was literally like pulled to it visually at the Game Swap, and it like stood out to me, the quality of production. And then I saw like the names on the box, and I was like, there's no way that this can be like bad, right? So I just kind of took a gamble, even though I weirdly hadn't heard about it up until that I saw it in person. This was like a pleasant surprise, a diamond in the rough of sorts for me. I know there's like expansions to this too that add like different kind of racetracks. Some of them feature like obstructions with special rules. I'd be a little curious to explore those, because the base game feels like it could use a little something extra. That said, this is a fun one. It's basically like, if you can't get your hands on Heat, you might as well get Downforce. Maybe you like both. I don't know.
In Restoration Games fashion, this is a remake of Wolfgang Kramer's Top Race from 1996, which in turn is a reissue of his Formel 1. I think the games are significantly different. I haven't played Top Race, but I've heard that like they did quite a bit in terms of quality of life improvements. I think Top Race had like a weird bidding where you had a certain number of credits, and it's just like that's way too complicated for kids for sure. They kind of like simplified the design and made it a lot more streamlined.
Yeah, I feel like you can sense that refinement process playing this. They cut all the fat, and it's a very lean, simple game that promises a lot of replayability. And that's Downforce, 2017.
Tom, I played an obscure game called Wingspan from 2019. Have you heard of this one?
I've never heard of it. No.
Yeah. It's designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, publisher Stonemaier Games. I don't know. I've never heard of them. Wingspan is a game in which you are capturing birds. What are the birds actually doing?
I think you're just like becoming bros with them.
Okay. Wingspan is a game in which you hang out with birds, and the birds that you hang out...
technically like you're observing them, actually, if you want the actual theme lore.
Is that really what it is? You're observing them? Okay.
Something like that.
Wingspan is a game in which you're observing birds, and depending on which birds you observe, you get more and more stuff. If you like tableau building games that have a huge deck of cards, you know, Terraforming Mars, Race for the Galaxy, Forest Shuffle, what else? Mosaic, things like that. Wingspan is a great addition in that collection of games. You basically don't have any two of the same bird, and all of the birds thematically match certain mechanics, but at the end of the day, each one is unique. And so you're kind of sifting through this big deck of birds and trying to figure out which ones make sense to observe or slot into your tableau. And the more you slot them, the more you're going to get goodies. So even though you run out of actions progressively as the rounds proceed, you're also getting way more out of each action, and so they become more and more meaningful. This is a game that I played 2-player pass and play on Board Game Arena. And I have to say, both aesthetically and in terms of the quality of life, it was really fun to play online. I don't think it replaces playing it in person for me, but it's definitely a really good alternative, especially if I want to play asynchronously. I have one complaint, though, Tom.
Okay.
The pink birds drive me insane because Nick, my opponent, he was like, "Ooh, this seems really good. I'm going to put this pink bird down as my first bird of the game that every time an opponent collects eggs, I can collect an egg too." And so for the rest of the game, every time I would hit egg, it's like pausing the game. We're going to go ask Nick if he wants to put an egg down. And of course the answer is yes, but then it would stop the whole game. I couldn't continue with my turn until he would click, "Yes, I want to put an egg down." And then it would come back to me, and just, it would like extended the length that we played this game by like an extra week. So that damn pink bird just drove me insane. I wish there was a way to turn them off. To
just sort of
like
yes, always say yes type thing.
Always say yes to placing pink bird.
They have that in like Magic Online, for example. There's a lot of triggers and upkeep and steps like that. So if you're getting something that happens a lot, or like every turn or every few seconds, you can just say like yes to all, you know, or like always yes type stuff. Exactly. They should definitely try and implement something like that if they can. That would be a nice quality of life thing.
It's a bummer because for the most part, Wingspan is a game where you can take your entire turn before it's your opponent's turn. So outside of that, like the game flew along at a really nice pace.
It just has this one reaction step that apparently slows the whole thing down, especially online.
Yeah, it flew along at a breezy pace, but there was one bad egg.
I was just talking about this game this morning, in fact, and the person I was talking with had played it, I think only twice, 3 times maybe, and he wasn't very taken by it, surprisingly, which is kind of rare. I feel like most people fall in love with this game pretty quickly, but I'm curious if you felt that way at first, like if there was ever a point where you were like, yeah, like it's a game, and then something kind of shifted and you were like, oh wait, this game's like lit.
Wingspan is one of the rare games that I enjoy for the vibe and for the theme, more so than for the mechanics. what it has done for the hobby is immense and wonderful. But like, it's not a game I come back to because I gotta play the wingspan mechanics, I guess. It's very much for the aesthetic. I just would always rather play like 51st State or Mosaic or Race for the Galaxy, like any of the other games that we mentioned.
You feel like those all sort of fit together because they just offer that card-driven tableau building sort of. Yeah. It's almost like an empire building game, except it's about birds, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'd even rather play Earth, and I'm not super big on Earth. But I think what brings me back to it is specifically, I love the birds, and I love how they're represented mechanically.
And you like eating those eggs.
Yep. They come right out the other end.
Well, that was Wingspan. Kenny, I'm going to talk about a game that I thought was from like 1999 based on the visual presentation, or at least like 2006. But apparently it's from 2015, and that's Karuba, designed by Rudiger Dorn and published, it seems, in the States by Haba. This is a neat game, and not only does it like look like an early 2000s type of game visually, when you just look at the picture, you know, it's like archaeologists in the jungle. By design, it feels like it could have come from that era. So it was surprising to me to look this one up, find out it was as recent as it is. That said, this is a nice, fun game. So it has like the same visual style as Ink and Gold, and I think the only way in which it borrows from it besides that is in the simplicity. This is a draw a tile and then everyone else has to play the same tile at the same time type of game. So very similar to another game that we've talked about called Scarabia, which functions almost like a roll and write, except of course the board is much more erasable. And so it's got that bingo-like style where one player is drawing out a tile, it has a number on it, they read the number out, and then everybody has to place the same tile. And so the trick of the game is who can puzzle their 4 explorers across the map and into the like ancient temples that they're trying to find, not only the fastest, but with enough stops to pick up rare gems along the way. So there's like a little bit of a race going on, but there's also this added element of, you know, when do you sacrifice a little bit of movement or time potentially to pick up these extra points. Just a lot of like interesting decisions to make turn over turn with very little in terms of setup cost and simultaneous turns. So this game just flies by and it's fun.
I thought it was fine. You won't be surprised that given how roll and write it was, it didn't really wow me. I mean, that being said, I enjoyed it. At the end of it, I was like, I had a good time. That was fun. I appreciate how short it is because there's one thing that bothers me more than roll and writes. It's extremely long roll and writes. Karuba was like a quick in and out. And the whole time I enjoyed the thinkiness of it, the puzzle that was to be discovered. But I just wish there was more interaction.
How do you feel like you compare this to like Scarabia?
It's similar. I would say Scarabia is even shorter. And Scarabia is more tactile too. It has that going for it. Also, Scarabia is just doing something that I haven't seen before, which is wrapping around things versus trying to fill areas. Whereas this is like another tile layer with routes. I thought it was very elegant, but it was the kind of game that when I was playing it, I was like, I know that people love this kind of game. Like this game is probably pretty popular.
Your mom sounds like she'd be a huge fan.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Is that a diss?
No.
Your mom would be a huge fan. Yeah, I think she would be. For me, I was just like, I could be playing Food Chain Magnet right now. I could be playing a snooty, pretentious game that only for nerds. And yet I'm playing Karuba.
Meanwhile, I was like, man, I could be playing Monopoly Deal right now. What am I doing?
A highly interactive game.
Exactly.
Rag as you will on Monopoly Deal, fellow listeners. But you can't deny it is a highly interactive game.
Yeah, if you want interactivity in your game, check out Monopoly Deal. If you want a non-interactive game that plays as quickly as Monopoly Deal with a nice amount of elegance, and you're tired of traditional roll and writes, you might want to check out Karuba. It's a neat little game. It's neat.
It's Karuba from 2015.
100 games to play before you die.
All right, Kenny. Well, for anybody who's new to the podcast and you don't know, this is the part of the show where we talk about the 100 games that Kenny thinks everybody should play before they turn 100. Rest in peace, Jimmy Carter. And that this week, game number 18 is Hanamikoji from 2013, designed by Kota Nakayama, published by Emperor S4. Kenny, why Hanamikoji? Didn't we already have Jaipur?
Yep. In a quick succession, we're going to have all these two-player games. Hanamikoji is here because of I split you choose, or I cut you choose, depending on your preferred way of referring to this mechanic. And like the name describes, it's a game where one player goes and groups two things separately, and they can arrange it as they please. So in Hanamikoji, for example, you have these different objects that you're trying to give to the geishas. And you can put two in one group, or you can do one and one, or, split it up as you like. And then your opponent gets to pick which of the two groupings they want to take first, and you get stuck with the remaining one. And so there's all this mind game surrounding, hey, I actually want the person to take this one, so I'll make it juicier, but secretly the stuff that's in the other one is what I want. Or, I'll just make them as enticing so that it's a win-win for me, but it's a lose-lose for them. The downside to I Split You Choose is that it can be very prone to analysis paralysis, and it can be very bad for pacing, in my opinion. But Hanamikoji makes away with this by making the game extremely short and making it all about these I Split You Choose minigames. Another fun thing is it's not just one version. There's the traditional splitting. And there's also a version where you offer 3 cards. There's no splitting. Your opponent picks one and you get the other 2, which is really cool. There's one where you're just secretly putting down an additional card. And then there's one where you're just pitching a card because you don't want to actually play that one, or maybe you just have to pitch a specific one. You're kind of playing with these 4 mini games that you always fire off, and you have to think about how they interplay, how your opponent is reacting to it. I just love how much game you get out of very little here, and how many layers deep you have to think about your turn.
This is 100% for the fans of Death Note, and if their favorite part was the way that Light was thinking what L was thinking, is thinking that Light is going to think, that Kira would think, that L would think, that Light would think.
You really enjoy this one, as I understand, although we've never played each other.
Yeah, weirdly enough. No, I do like this one. I am not very good at it, but I enjoy the style. This sort of impending clock almost, where the 4 actions you take, whichever one you take first is going to create the most information potentially, but then you won't have that option left later. So it's almost got a countdown. And I feel that probably also cuts the analysis paralysis out a little bit, because you just have less to choose from each turn, which is nice. Really smart, simple, and quick design. And it makes you feel smart playing it, which is, I think, the biggest boon.
If you've never played an I Split You Choose, or if you've played them and haven't been super enamored with them, I recommend Hanamikoji. I don't think we're there yet with I Split You Choose. I don't think it's having its golden moment the way that Trick Taking has had. But I do think that Hanamikoji is one of the best implementations of it that there is out there to, for people to play with.
For sure. Now, does this for you also kind of end up representing Shotten Totten and Konichia's battle line, that type of thing?
A little bit, yeah, or Lost Cities and stuff like that. I think, because of the tug-of-war aspect. Other ones that come to mind are Royal Visit or Watergate. Those definitely get put in this category as well, because I think this really well represents kind of the 1v1 tug-of-war back and forth, with both people kind of contributing and pushing and pulling on each other in different lanes, quote unquote.
Yeah, I feel I like that style of game in general as well. There's just something really cool about the way that the fight between the two players evolves as different zones sort of fall, in favor. Air, Land, and Sea does this as well. Yeah, just the different lanes, having to manage them and knowing kind of when to concede one so you can refocus your efforts on the other. I really enjoy this type of design, especially for 2 players.
That was Hanamikoji.
All right, Kenny. Well, enough of that bullshit, whatever the fuck kind of shit we've been talking about. Some bunch of games from like the 2010s. Who gives an F? We're living in 2025, baby. It's time to get into the real meat and potatoes of this podcast. And I want to know, how the hell do I get reinvited to the goddamn game night? They invite me out to game night because I'm like, I like games. And then I come over and they're ready and set up, thimble, car, and dog taken for a game of Monopoly. And I have to choose between the hat and the iron. And then they don't invite me back. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, why do they have the hat and the iron? Why are they playing Monopoly? You don't want to be at that game night.
Counterpoint, Kenny. If they're playing Monopoly, you better have fucking brought Monopoly Deal. Because it's the best version of Monopoly, and it'll be easy to transition into Monopoly Deal because they're already playing Monopoly.
So what's the ground rules here? I'm assuming we're talking about someone that's new to the hobby. This isn't like, I'm nervous about going to game night. I've only played my Lacerda game solo at home, and now I'm ready to branch out. Like, I think that's a different...
I played CO2 Second Chance by myself every weekend. I'm ready to join society.
I think this is like, I've either just started exploring board games or I'm brand new to it. I want to branch out and meet people. Where do I even start?
Or maybe you're well established in the hobby, and you kind of have trouble relating to people that don't want to play PAX Premier.
Well, no, that was my question. Are we including those people or not?
I feel like hopefully the advice applies broadly. As the socialites that we are, perhaps we can endow our dear listeners with advice on how to be a little more extroverted if they want to play with other human beings.
Okay, so let's factor in both then.
Step number 1, don't actually eat the pieces.
I'm not going to argue with you on that one. As somebody who's eaten many board game pieces in my life, it just never ends well.
Have you ever tasted a Switch cartridge?
A Switch cartridge?
Yeah, they're notoriously
I'm not a monster.
Nasty. Okay.
I eat board game components. I don't eat video games.
No, fair enough.
You think they do that so kids won't eat them?
I think there genuinely is some level to that where they're like, I don't know if it was intentionally designed that way, but they were probably like, sick side effect.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. Don't eat the pieces. Shall we go to real advice?
Yeah.
Here's my first one. Let me hit you with this, Tom.
Okay.
General advice on how to find a game night. Most of the time, your best bet, in my opinion, is going to be Facebook groups. That's where you're going to find out where the game nights are. And there's going to be public game nights, like ones that happen usually once a week at some game store. If you're not finding that board game group for your local area, you can either find it through a backwards approach, or you can find an alternative, which is to go to the game store's website and look at their calendar of events. That'll also get you to the same place. Either way, that's where you're going to find the group that regularly meets. And maybe, you're lucky and you have multiple game stores in your area. Check all of them. That'll increase your chances of finding a good one.
I mean, fun fact, Kenny, this is actually how you and I met. I literally just called store after store, and it was my third one, and I was just asking them, hey, do you have anybody that meets up regularly to play Android Netrunner? I'm looking for people to play Android Netrunner. Yeah, the third store, they were like, yeah, we have like 3 guys that show up every week for that, I think, on Thursdays, something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Now that one might be a little bit easier because it's a game that at the time at least had like a living competitive community, kind of like Magic or those other types of games. But if you're just looking for general games, there's almost definitely at least one friendly local game store in your area that is meeting up regularly. So just give them all a call. Someone, ought to be able to help you out. And I've never heard that not work for people. The Facebook group thing is interesting. I do think if you're not finding a group for your area, or maybe you live somewhere where it's like maybe pretty small, the game stores just they don't really have the table space, be the person that creates the Facebook group.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Like if you're not seeing it, that means it's on you.
Listeners might be able to tell this about me, maybe they can't, but I used to be a brony, and early on there weren't a lot of events in our particular area. So I was one of the first people that started creating event listings and getting people to show up and managing a Facebook group, which ended up growing quite a bit.
I like to go on record and say that I never was a brony. I tried to watch My Little Pony, but I thought it was meh. So I don't want to be lumped in with this nerd over here. I was too busy playing football.
We're gonna, need to keep that very much in mind. Okay.
Yeah. I just want it on record.
Brony. Yeah. My point is, nobody had made groups for this area. I was like, I gotta meet other people that are into this. And I made some lifelong friends by doing that. Just put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just make it a group. Start adding people or like list it publicly so people can join as they want. If there is no active game night, you tell a local game store like, hey, I want to start meeting up in your building. Would you mind, like, if anyone asks, we can tell people, put up posters if they have any space for that on their wall. Your local library maybe has a meeting room that you can rent out regularly. Make it happen. There, you have the power. Board Game Geek as well also has like forums separated by region that you can post to try and find people in your particular area.
Yeah, the only caution with Board Game Geek forums is that I think they're really constructive for online discussion. I don't know that they get used as actively for finding things in person. I could be wrong. It could be based on region, but I haven't had a lot of success on my end.
I will say, like, the forums, I think, are not super active with, hot locals in your area per se. I'm personally subscribed to like the Northwestern region forum, just in case anybody is throwing stuff out there that happens to be near us. 90% of the time it ends up on like coastal Oregon and California. But, it's like people are abreast of these things and are listening in, I think. So
yeah, that makes sense.
You might get some traction.
Do you have any others on like how to find a game night? If you know somebody that's into games, telling them like, hey, I'm interested in getting more into this. Do you have a game night? It's weird because usually like we're the ones that people reach out to. So I don't have experience doing the reaching out myself for this one. I don't know how well equipped we are.
I this did happen to me once. And it was like, I was going to our local game store and there was a guy there. I forget what he was playing. I just chatted him up based on the game he was playing, which is the neat thing about this hobby is that if you see someone playing a game that you have any interest in, you can literally just walk up and be like, oh, I've always been curious about this. What's it like, And he was like, hey, if you want to come over and play it, you can just come on down. And he gave me his number. And this guy was a little bit older than me. So I was like, and I don't know, I was like 19 at the time. So I was a little bit sus. So I brought my friend with me, just to make sure that we had each other's backs, at least if anything weird happened. But I don't know why I was so paranoid at the time. In retrospect, maybe it's reasonable to act that way. But it like turned out that he was like the manager of an apartment complex. So he had like kind of the rec center sort of all to himself. And we would go in and play games. And that ended up being a really cool experience. That was like one of my earliest sort of regular game groups. That's where I first played Ethnos, Brass. So sometimes it can be that easy, In that situation, it was like they offered the invite like very readily. I feel like it could have been a little more challenging for me to sort of break into that, but it's almost like dating in the sense, like you just kind of have to put yourself out there and show up to the spot.
Yeah, you got to just show up. You got to say, hey, do you do game nights ever? That's not too bad, right? Like that sentence. I know it's still hard. I think it clears,
but it can be tough for a lot of people to really like read the vibe and whether the other person is actually interested in inviting you over. It literally is kind of like flirting in a certain way.
I like your meeples. Do you ever do game night?
Yeah. That's what we should invent, pickup lines for people to join game groups.
No, please not. Okay, moving on. So you found out where the game nights are. Maybe you even got invited to one. You're kind of alluding to this, Tom, but do you have any advice on like how to mentally get yourself to actually show up?
Bring a friend. If you have one. I guess in some cases you might be looking for this because you don't have that friend. But like, find the person who you're closest with. They understand, you're passionate about this hobby. They will at least support you socially the one time, if not the second time, right? Like maybe they aren't that into games, but you can be like, bro, just like, please, come on, I'll let you play Monopoly with me. I just need someone, to help me out to make sure that I don't get jumped by a mysterious older gentleman from the game store, right?
Yeah.
It can be so reassuring to just have like that one other person that already knows you already know them. And even if you don't even sit at the same game together for whatever reason, it can just be reassuring to have that person in your back pocket.
Another thing is like, don't worry about your level of knowledge. If you are brand new to games, that's totally fine. If you've never played any of these games, but you've got an interest in them, people will have them available there. There's probably going to be someone who's willing to teach it. Don't be expected to have to bring anything. You can just show up as yourself and people will teach you. I'm talking in generalizations here. I feel like as a rule of thumb, these game nights are super welcoming to new players. I put a little asterisk next to it.
For sure. I guess I personally haven't run into a scenario where a person who didn't know was like a downer for everyone else, where everyone else was like, oh, like you don't know PAX Premier.
Yeah,
it's
it
more
just
like
doesn't happen.
If you're open-minded enough for anything, gamers will play anything with you, even if that is Eclipse and you've never played any less complex game in your life. They will be ready to play Eclipse if you're open-minded enough.
I have heard horror stories of somebody going and everybody's already grouped up in groups and things like that. But those are the minority. Don't let that deter you from going. 99% of the time, people are going to be really welcoming to you. Again, I put an asterisk next to it because I don't want somebody to be like, they lied.
That's a good point you bring up, where if you're just rolling up to the game store, you don't want to be late because people will already be locked in. So if you can help it at all, try to even be a little bit early. Just talk to the staff or whatever.
But counterpoint,
we got phones.
Counterpoint, maybe some folks don't like the pressure of having to participate in that first game. Maybe they want to watch a group of 4 play a game and have somebody kind of explain to them what's going on. And then maybe they play the game a second time and they hop in. I don't know. Even if all the games are full, that might actually be the best case scenario for your first time, because then you don't have the pressure of actually playing the game with people. You can just interact with the one person who's the most welcoming, who's like, you want to watch us play this? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of
I think that really is like almost like a person-to-person thing then. Exactly. For some people, it can be intimidating to drop yourself in on a group when they're already in the middle of something and hover over them. And, maybe you're just worried too much about like, how much am I farting? Are they noticing that I'm farting this much? I'm so nervous that I'm farting more than I normally do. So this is really frustrating for me. And if you're someone that worries about all those types of things while you're sitting next to a group watching them play, being early is probably the right move. But if you are the kind of person that would rather just sit and be a spectator first and then jump in, then yeah, show up a little late, frankly.
Yeah. Okay, so you're there, you're interacting with people. There are things that can increase your experience and the experience of the people around you when you're at the game night and you're new. One juicy one that I have here is tell them the kinds of games that you've enjoyed in the past. They'll probably ask you anyway, but don't do I just like anything, or, I've enjoyed Monopoly in the past. It's much better to give a description like, I've only played the games that you find at like Walmart. So I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm interested in other things. Or, I've played Settlers of Catan. I fell in love with it. I really want to get to that next thing. Give them an idea of what things you like, what things you don't like. You can compare it to video games too. You can tell them what video games you play, so I can give them a better idea, or what themes you're into.
Counterpoint though, Kenny, because that could backfire on you. If you go, oh, I do like Dark Souls, they'd be like, well, have you tried Dark Souls, the board game?
Yeah, I guess that could get you dangerous.
Maybe you could be ready for that, but that's very much a personal call.
No, that's a good point. Like, those things don't always equate. Maybe, take the video game one with a grain of salt. But I guess what I'm trying to say is give people an idea of what they might succeed with you on. Help them curate things.
I really like the idea of trying to guide people towards your own interests. Like, yeah, definitely don't be afraid almost to overshare your opinions, experiences with different games. You know, I will say hesitate to be overly critical or a hater. You know, you listen to us probably because you enjoy our haterisms, but like in person in real life, I try to rein it in and not necessarily like take a giant dump when I see someone enjoying something that I personally detest. I
feel like the person who's needing this topic probably isn't going to be the one that's just like, this is absolute garbage. Those are like two different people, but I digress.
Yeah, maybe. I guess like I have run into this though, where like people, and I've done this a little bit myself maybe, is like you overcorrect by like proving to other people that you already know what's cool. Yo, it's cool to hate on Catan.
Oh, okay.
Dump on Catan, you know?
Yeah, don't dunk on Catan.
Myself. Yeah, you don't have to prove yourself by being like a hater or walking in as if you have like a superiority complex already built in.
That gives me like poser skateboard energy.
For real, yeah, exactly.
When you're playing the game, there are things that new players do that can be, they're new kind of frustrating levels for other people around the table. Like they're not going to actually legitimately upset them, but there are going to be things that you could easily have avoided. The biggest one is, I don't know why, but it's much more common for new players to like fiddle around and damage cards. Maybe this is a personal experience, but hey, maybe don't bend the cards of the person that you don't even know's game. Like, just don't do that, please. This is less the case for people who show up to a game night and more for people who are invited to a game night that like don't play games. Oh yeah, we're playing games tonight. And then like they drink a few beers and then all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to fold all your cards in two. Don't do that. Don't fold the cards. If you think you're fold prone, don't drink 2 beers before you start playing.
I have seen people do this where they just are overzealous, shall we say, with how much they are testing the flexibility of the cardboard. I also don't know why this happens. You know, it feels barbaric to me, but I'm sure at some point, like I maybe didn't think this way. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess if you're out there listening to this and you don't already know, like be aware of if you have a fidgeting problem when it comes to the cards. Because you don't want to be that person that doesn't get invited back because you're like damaging their Kickstarter exclusive edition.
Another one that I see commonly is like people overly focusing on whether they win or not. A lot of seasoned board gamers will kind of be like, ha ha ha, I remember when I cared about when I won games. There's a reason why. It's because the reason we play is for the fun of it. It's not to win or lose. I'm sure there's still some sweaty tryhards out there. Tom, they focus on that a little bit too much.
Yeah.
That for the most part, you're there to enjoy the experience of the game and the presence of others. Like you're still trying to win, but that's not the goal. You're not going there to increase your number of wins.
It's like that Knizia quote that I think we both really like, but try to win, but don't make it about the win. What was it exactly?
That's verbatim, right? No, I think it's the goal of the game is to win, but winning is not why we play the game or something like that. At the end of the night, the things that people are going to care about in terms of you is that you were down to play games and that you were fun to have at the table. They're not going to care about how you performed or what your level of experience was with games. None of that matters. The only thing people care about is like, are you somebody that's fun to play games with?
I personally kind of struggle with this almost on and off. The feeling like when I'm losing a game, it has something to do with my like personal intelligence. So it's like an insult almost to have lost. Like I'm dumb. You know, that's like the story I'm telling myself. And I recognize that about myself. And so I feel like I generally can rein it in on most things. But I've noticed this in other people, you know, especially playing Magic. And I've seen it happen even myself sort of being a bad actor in this, which is that like you lose and like it's just like the anger is like emanating from you, and it's like bringing the vibe way down. You know, if you know that this happens to you, like try maybe to stick with like the games that you know are like light and fun. I don't know what to tell someone, I guess, if they like really just don't have their anger management checked at all. See a therapist.
Yeah, that's like outside of our level of expertise.
That's like advice I can't give you, I guess. But it's like if you kind of know that like you get upset a little bit easily, you know, maybe just at least for that first impression, stick with the lighter fare. And when people get to know you a little bit better and they know that you're a competitive person, you could maybe take the plunge on something that might make you a little bit upset, but people by then they know you, and they just know that like that's a little bit who you are. It's not necessarily going to be like as awkward as a stranger, like getting really upset, like at the table. It's just like, oh God, like, you know, what do we do about this?
I think you're too hard on yourself, Tom. You're not dumb. You're just really bad at Food Chain Magnet.
You've never seen me lose a game of Magic to a top deck, so.
That's true.
But I appreciate it, Kenny. Thanks.
At the end of the night, get people's contact info if you really enjoyed playing with them. And then don't hesitate to tell people which games really stood out to you. You don't have to be harsh on the ones that you didn't enjoy. But if there's something you really liked, give them that feedback so that next time they can bring you more of what you liked. Or if there's a game you've been interested in that you want to play, like bring that up as well so that that's something that they can follow up on next time.
You don't even have to worry about fitting it that naturally into the conversation. Just at some point, blurt it out and be like, I've always really wanted to play Doomtown.
Yeah, exactly.
And then someone will be like, oh, I think I still have a copy of that somewhere. I don't know.
Why that one?
I've just been thinking about it. I really don't know. I have no explanation.
Yeah.
I really want to play it, Kenny. You know? Do you know someone?
Yeah, maybe. It's just a nice way to both provide gratitude to the folks around, like show them that you enjoyed it, and also kind of hint that you want to go at it again. Like you wouldn't be talking about things you want to do in the future and things you enjoyed if it wasn't for having had a good time. So that's how you do the hook, line, and sinker.
It's crazy how much this sounds like dating advice.
We should just rename it to like Tom and Kenny explain dating.
Yeah, we'll save that for a bonus episode. Don't talk about anime. That's like another pro tip I have.
just a life lesson.
And who gave us this idea for this episode?
Well, I don't want to put him on blast. It was a noob.
Right, well, I think that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening. You know, tell us how it went for you. Did you get invited to the game night? Did you get invited back to the game night? Did this advice help you at all? Did it ruin your chances at game night? Did you take Gas X before because you knew you'd be nervous and you didn't want to fight too much? Please let us know. You can leave us a comment on YouTube. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps out the show a ton. And of course, sharing it with your friends. But thank you especially to Michael, Tyler, Devon, and Josh of the Boise RainBeaus. And another thank you to Bone House for letting us use their song, Rot, as our opening theme.
SaltCon is on February 27th, going through March 2nd in Layton, Utah. We're going to be there. We're going to do a live show. We're going to play games with fans. Definitely stop by and say hi. If you're loving the cast, share it with a friend or on Reddit or on BGG. Especially this episode, there's a good chance that the second half was like not super helpful to you, but still entertaining. Why don't you pass this episode along to that person that you're like, hey, I know they've been meaning to play games more, but they're a little nervous about it.
Give it to your shy, introverted friends and tell them that they should just listen to everything we said, follow the advice verbatim, and that they should tell us how it went.
And if you do want to send that, you can send it to us directly at shelfstablecast@gmail.com. We also have a BGG forum and a Blue Sky. All of that info is available in the show notes.
Please follow us on Blue Sky, shelfstablecast@bluesky.com. I want more followers on Blue Sky because that's where it's at.
Tom, you know what we want to talk about?
Next week, Kenny, I think we should give our unsolicited opinion on every mass market game out there. Every game from Walmart ranked. The mass market tier list. Next week on Shelf Stable.
Get ready, Monopoly. We're coming for you. Bye.
See ya.